The winter of 2026 in Poland was amazing, reminding me of the real winters from my childhood, with crunchy snow under my boots, icicles, frost, and winter walks through the winter forests and frozen swamps. I made lots of photos. I especially liked the marshy clumps of grass with snow caps. They look like chubby gnomes, and I had to paint them. Snow is quite a difficult subject in watercolor. We have to use a lot of white of the paper. It seems easier to me to paint it with opaque paints such as acrylic, oils and gouaches. On a sunny winter day, I'm particularly struck by the contrast between the warm sunlight and the blue shadows, and that is what I wanted to capture in my winter watercolors. I made a sketch on A3 watercolor paper using a watercolor pencil, which was then completely blurred by the paints, but I wanted just to plan composition before applying the first pigments. I soaked the paper in section of sky and background, and after applying the pigment I tilted the surface so that it flowed down, creating a smooth gradient. Then I worked on the trees furthest in the background. The paper dried and went from wet to damp, which meant that the paint no longer spread sideways, but the patches of color still had soft, blurred edges. The paper gradually dried, allowing me to add a little more detail to the trees in the background. The edges of the spots are sharper. I painted the reflection of the water on the river and the interesting texture of the oak leaves sticking out from under the snow. After finishing the background, I started painting my favorite motif on this watercolor, the blue shadows of the oak trees. The sun's rays give the snow a yellowish warm hue, creating a color contrast. Now I regret not using a wider brush for the shadows. In watercolor painting, it's best to be able to describe the shape with a single stroke. I'm not that level yet, but I hope to get there. The background is almost dry, so I'm starting on the branches. They might still spread a little, but that's better, they'll be branches in the distance. I don't strive to reproduce exactly what I see in the photo. On the contrary, I try to leave room for interpretation, space for the viewer's imagination to suggest shapes and elements, to capture a synthesis and an impression rather than copy the photo. Overworking takes away much of the lightness and freshness of watercolors. When painting the trunks, I allow them to blend in some places, while in others I separate them using contrast. I think I managed to capture the warm light of winter day, which brings out more colors from the landscape. Still typically bright as it's typical in winter, but the limited palette allows them to shine through. The entire painting process was exceptionally enjoyable and seemed to happen on its own, with little input from me. This feeling of flow is not the norm, so I'm even more pleased that it appeared this time. I often find myself struggling with a painting, forcing it to show what I want to show. I'm glad that each process looks a little different, there is no boredom. I will remember this feeling of lightness when painting, which is very useful as motivation for further work. I also think that there is no need to worry that painting is sometimes a struggle and frustrating, because mistakes are also necessary as they allow us to find solutions and become better. I've talked a lot. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening. I've noticed that when I'm painting, I often like to play a video of another artist's process in the background, take a peek now and then and listen to their techniques and thoughts. It gives me the impression of participating in the creative process together, and I hope this film will do the same for you. Despite enjoying the 2 months winter, I'm already a little fed up and starting to look forward to spring. Recently I've been showing a lot of traditional media on my channel, so it's very likely that the next material will be about digital media. So see you and hear you soon.